Okay, question 2. I'm going to introduce you now to something almost completely different called regex. Now, regex is almost like another coding language in its own right. The regex stands for regular expressions. And what this is, it's a kind of, it's a very consistent way. I say consistent, I mean all across all programming languages of identifying matches to strings in any language, and it's really, really useful, super duper useful, because up to this point we have actually been doing things like looping over a string and checking each character one by one, and then saying, oh, if it is there, keep it, or if it isn't there, we'll ignore it. Or if it's got an X in it, we'll throw an error. So what a regex allows us to do is basically not to have to loop. We can validate a string just with a single bit of code by matching what we call a pattern. Now this is not really for the faint-hearted, and there's so much more that you could learn about regex, but I want to introduce it to you here simply because it will undoubtedly be of use to you in the near future, right? Even if you don't really get what's going on here, don't worry about it. We are going to have a go, and hopefully I'll be able to show you something you've probably already done before, but in a slightly different way. Okay, so let me just read out this question. We're going to write a regex to test whether a string is a valid DNA sequence, i.e. only contains ACGT. We've done this already in a previous workshop. We're going to use a function called re.fullmatch to check sequences like ATCGT. I've got a couple of examples I'm going to throw at you, and then determine whether they are valid or invalid. Okay. Right, so let me go back to Visual Studio. I'm going to create a new file called q2.py, and I'm going to start writing some code. So question 2, what we're going to do, check if a string is a valid DNA sequence using regex. Okay, so the first important thing is that I need to import a new module here. So I'll just write it, import re. If you're going to use regex, you need to import this in Python. Now it's already stored in your interpreter somewhere, so you don't need to install it as an additional package like you do some, but you're going to need to bring it into your current environment for use. So you need to use an import function, and that is actually something I really want to show you how to do this week. You've kind of done it already in some instances. For example, you might have used math. So it's the same thing really. We're going to use a module called regex to do something. Right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define what I call a pattern, a regex pattern. Okay, and I'm actually going to give it a variable name called pattern. Okay, and I'm going to store it in there. Now this is the fun bit, right? Now I'm going to start my pattern with an R, and I'm going to hit it with a quotation mark. So that is how all of your regex pattern should start in Python. So the R is really kind of indicating there that it is, without going into too much detail, it's what we call a raw string literal. And what the R will make sure happens is it doesn't, so if I put another, if I put a character in here, like a backslash or forward slash, it shouldn't escape that character and do something else that we're not anticipating. Anyway, I'm not going to talk anymore about that. Just make sure you put the R in, that's important. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this character. For me, it's Shift and 6. It might be different for you depending on what keyboard you're using. But that, what we call, I think it's called a caret, is to indicate that I'm starting my pattern. Okay, this is the start of my string. I'm just going to type some stuff now. I'm going to do this, open square bracket, ACGT, close bracket, and then I'm going to put a plus, and then I'm going to put a dollar sign. Now this is ugly, I know. Let me just explain exactly what I'm doing here. So I'm going to put it as a comment. Right, so I'm basically going to start my pattern with here, okay, and I'm looking for one or more A's, C's, G's, and T's, and then the dollar sign to end, right? So that means that's the end of my regex. So let's just unpack that. So I'm basically, the square bracket indicates I can find any of these, A, C, G's, or T's. They're all uppercase, that's important. The plus indicates that there might be more than one. And the dollar sign just indicates that I don't want anything else. Okay, there can't be anything else in that sequence, right? Okay, let's just run this and I'll show you how it works. Right, let's create some tests. I'm just going to create some random stuff now. A, T, C, G, T, T. That's one. Let's do. So that should be a valid one because it's all A's, T's, and C's and G's. Let's do an AXTG. That will give me. That should be invalid because it's got an X in it. Let's do another one. A Gattaca. Oh, look at that Gattaca. Okay. And then I'll do AGCT, but I'm going to do it in lowercase. Okay. Right, and remember what we're trying to do here is we are determine. Okay, we're going to use our pattern to determine if tests are valid, invalid. Okay, so I'm going to loop over these tests now for sequence in tests, and of course if I was to print that out, oops, I always do that. If I just do print seek, of course, and run this, it should just print those out. There we go. So I'm going to go through each of these sequences by turn, and now I'm going to use my pattern to determine whether this sequence is valid or invalid. Right, now if I was doing that sequence by sequence previously, I would have had another for loop in here for each sequence to go through it character by character and then do if I don't know what I do, if A then continue, or if C continue until it got to something it didn't like. That's really inefficient. Okay, so I'm going to use this re dot full match. Okay, pattern seek upper. Okay, so let me just unpack this here. This full match is what we're doing here, and that's if it's an if statement as well, by the way, so we need the colon. It's using this function called full match, and what that does is essentially looks at the full string in each full string in turn, and it uses the pattern to see if there is a match. Okay, and if so, then I'm going to print out that the sequence is valid. Put a space, put that there as well. If it's not, else print sequence invalid. Don't actually think I need the space there. Let's have a look. So what that's going to do is going to go through each one of these in turns. It's going to actually it's going to make everything uppercase. In fact, I'm going to take that off so I should get an error on my last one there. And then it's going to use this function, which is going to compare my pattern against the sequence. And if it matches, then it'll say valid. Otherwise, it won't. It'll say invalid. So you can see here, it should work for this one, not for this one. It should work for this one. And because I haven't got dot upper, it should work for that one as well. Actually, because I haven't got dot upper, it shouldn't work for this one because it's case sensitive. Let's run it. There we go. Valid, invalid, valid, invalid. If I were to have done dot upper, and run that, it actually tells me that AGCT is also valid. Okay,